Welcome to the basics of champion points. I'm going to try to go over what they are and how you spend them in kind of a quick and easy fashion. So, first thing, what are they? Basically, champion points are the levels that you earn after you reach max level, which is 50. Champion points are also a resource that you can spend to improve your character. And I'll show you what that means in just a moment. But the first thing we want to look at is how can you get to your champion points? Normally I think it's set to the equal sign, but you can tell for sure if you go into settings, controls, key bindings, scroll on down to user interface, and if you look for champion, you can see what it's set to. Like I said, in my case, it's set to equals, so that's how you get in there. So with that said, when you hit equals, this is what you get. You notice you've got three different sections. You've got the thief, the mage, and the warrior. Each of these sections earns champion points on their own. So your first point will go into one of them. The next point you earn goes into the next. Next point beyond that goes into the third. And then the fourth point's back into the first one that earned it. So what do you do with champion points? Well, you're going to spend them in each of these trees. A thief point can be spent in either the tower, the lever, or the shadow. Mage point in the apprentice, the Atronach, or the ritual, and a warrior point in the steed, the lady, or the lord. The next kind of obvious question is, what does this do for me? Well, let's look in some of the trees and see. So if you have a thief point, you can choose to spend it in the tower. Basically, you can spend it in any of the four things down here. And as you spend them, if you put 10 points into the tower, you'll earn this passive. At 30 points, you'll earn inspiration boost, 75, and 120. And all of the trees have that 10, 30, 75, and 120. So the more you invest in a tree, the more free benefits you get, basically. Beyond just that, though, putting points into any particular tree, like spending a thief point, increases your stamina. Spending a mage point increases your magicka, and spending a warrior point increases your health. And the trees are basically themed around that. So you can see one example is in the tower, you've got the warlord as one of the things you can improve. The more points that you put into the warlord, the more it will reduce the stamina cost of abilities. In this case, I've got 37 points into it, and that's reducing my cost by 8.8%. The next point will get it to 8.9. So you can see there's very small changes as you put additional points in. That's to encourage you to spread them out somewhat. In terms of what should you put points into, that's really a question of what your build is like. In this particular case, Pyrrha here is a Stamina Nightblade. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've chosen to buy with her so you can get a sense of how you might make the choices yourself. So I'll start with the Thief tree. Like I said, having some points in Warlord is good. Reducing the stamina cost of abilities gives you more sustain, and you can do better there. If you're a Magicka character, you'd go into the Magician to reduce cost of Magicka. Sprinting, not usually worth putting points into. And bashing attacks, again, not usually a big thing. The lever, I've got 75 points in Mooncalf, which increases stamina recovery. Your other options are increasing magic recovery for your Magicka character, increasing the amount of magic and stamina that your heavy attacks restore, or increasing health recovery. Health recovery is kind of a junk stat in the game, so usually worth skipping this. I've got 75 points in here for Plentiful Harvest, which doubles how much you harvest, 10% chance. Synergizer for 2 ultimate anytime you activate a synergy, always nice to have. And Master Gatherer, basically you harvest things in one swing rather than two. So, in the Shadow, I've got 75 points in Tumbling, and a note on the way I've got the points set up here. A lot of this is just for quality of life. For instance, I like having Master Gatherer because it makes it faster to gather stuff. It's not necessarily the optimal way to be setting up your points. Also, early on, since you're only going to have a few points to put in, you really don't have to stress over it. It's very easy to redistribute these. It only costs 3,000 gold if you choose to, and you can change all of your points. You can do it at any time, so make some choices. Don't be too afraid to make the wrong choice because you can always change it later. Um, like I was saying, in this case, I've got 75 points into tumbling for reducing the cost of roll dodge and break free. I could put that into healing reduction. That's not something you find very useful very often. Stamina cost moving while stealth, again, not usually a critical thing. Or reducing the cost of blocking. For tanks, this is amazingly useful. But I don't tend to block very much on a stamina DPS snipe blade, so. But the reason I put 75 points in here is Fortune Seeker increases the amount of gold you find in chests. It's not a huge number, but 50% is still decent. Armor repairs, who cares? Treasure Hunter, though, is what I'm going for, and that's to have better items appear in the chests that I open. So they'll be green rather than, or they'll be blue rather than green, or they'll just be better or more stuff there. It's just kind of nice to have that so that you know when you open a chest, you're getting better stuff. Like I said, the Thief in general, all three of these are stamina focused, so each point that you put into any one of these will increase your max stamina. That's why characters with high champion points tend to be much more powerful than ones who are just starting out at level 50, basically. Over in the mage trees, in the apprentice, there's not a heck of a lot for a stamina character. Most of these are all focused for magic characters, so Elemental Expert is increasing your elemental damage. Elfborn is increasing your spell critical damage. Spell Erosion is spell penetration. And Blessed is the effectiveness of healing. Generally, for a stam character, you're not going to wind up putting anything here. In the Atronach, I've got 10 points into melee weapon expert. That gets me retaliation. If I block a heavy attack, I can do more damage with my light attack. It's kind of minor. Could easily justify pulling these out and putting them someplace else. And that someplace else would be here. This is the tree, the ritual that stamina characters are going to go into heavily. For Mighty, that just increases your physical, poison, and disease damage across the board. So I've got 18.9%. Precise Strikes increases your weapon critical damage. So I've got 15.4 extra percent there from 50. And Thaumaturge increases damage over time. This is useful for almost everybody because most people do damage over time with some of their powers. And Piercing is physical penetration. Like I said, the layout of these points, I'm not going to swear to as being particularly good. I think I just kind of threw them in there. You can make a case for Piercing being valuable, especially against boss mobs that tend to have noticeable levels of armor. To an extent, what your build is will determine where you want to put your points. If your build already has a lot of physical penetration, it may not need as much here. If you have a lot of critical hit, there's a chance to do a critical, you may want more in Precise Strike so you do more damage. It's never bad to have Mighty because that's just your basic damage. And this also highlights something about stamina characters in general, because when you build up Mighty to build up your physical damage, you're also building up poison and disease. Stamina characters usually like to be doing one of those three damage types, since they're all going to benefit from this one champion ability. Skipping over to the warrior tree, which is your orange. You've got the steed, which is critical resistance. That's only applicable in PvP. PvE mobs don't crit you, so it's of no value unless you're PvPing. Spell shield increases spell resistance. Again, nice for a tank. Reducing the duration of snares, fear, stuns. You're going to be breaking free of it anyways, probably, so who cares? Medium armor focus. You're not going to wind up with a lot of physical resistance anyways, so that's why I basically skipped this tree. Also, the passives don't really help you that much. Small chance to get a small amount of health when you bash an enemy. You're not going to be bashing them that often. After roll dodge, you get a tiny bit of physical spell resistance. kind of who cares. Health when you're hit by critical attacks, but again, nothing's going to hit you with a critical except another player, and 122 health is going to be completely meaningless in PvP. And then activate a block and get a small damage shield. That might be useful, but you'd be putting 120 points into a tree that really doesn't help you. The Lady, on the other hand, helps everybody. And again, I'm not going to swear that this is the bestest allocation of points. It's going to depend a little bit on your build. The basic idea, though, is Hardy just flat out reduces poison, disease, and physical damage. Elemental Defender flat out reduces flame, frost, shock, and magic damage. And then Thick-Skinned reduces damage over time. So in this case, I just spread the points out evenly, so I'd have, a little over 10% damage reduction versus everything. And that also gets me spell absorption, so I can get some magicka back when I take elemental damage. As a stamina character, magic is not that critical, but you do use it for some things, so it's nice to have. I don't equip a shield, so this is kind of meaningless. Restoring some health when you hit with a critical strike. Well, I can crit PvE mobs, so that's theoretically useful, but again, it's a tiny amount of health. And then this is the nice one. When you break free from any kind of stun or knockdown, you get an 80% reduction on stamina costs for the next 3 seconds. So you can throw some sort of heavy cost stamina abilities out after breaking free, and it's very, very cheap. Not the be-all end-all, and you don't get this until you've earned essentially 360 total champion points, because you would be earning 120 in Warrior, 120 in Mage, and 120 in Thief to be able to get up to here. And the last tree is the Lord. You can see I've got 67 points in there. In this case, I've got it in Quick Recovery. Even as a stamina character, I could be healing myself, and I'm probably going to be in a party being healed by somebody else, so 12% extra health is something decent. The passives that you get are, you get a little bit of damage reduction while you're resurrecting someone else, which can be nice because you can't really defend yourself otherwise. And you increase another player's magicka recovery by a small amount for 8 seconds after you resurrect them. Just helps them get back on their feet more. So that's kind of the abilities that I picked. Usually it's pretty easy to sort between your magicka character or you're a stamina character, and if you're a tank, you're looking for things that help survivability. So a last interesting note on champion points, an important thing to remember is the champion points that you earn on one character are available on all of your characters. Important numbers for champion points are, at this point, champion point 160, which represents the highest level of gear that you can equip, and currently champion point 561, which are the maximum number of champion points that you can spend in these trees. You can earn above and beyond that, but you just won't be able to actually spend them in the tree, which means your stats won't increase and you won't have any of the extra bonuses. So for instance, at this point I have 212 out of 187. So I can spend 187, but I've got 212. The reason that's meaningful is as you earn points above the cap, they occasionally adjust the cap upwards. So with the next release, which is Homestead, the cap's going to go from 561 to 600. So that's the other interesting number of champion points beyond 160. Basically, you want to get to 160 first so you can equip your maximum level gear, then get to the cap. And that's basically all there is to champion points. Hope this was helpful.